What is going on, Boop Bop? Welcome to the Table Podcast. I'm your girl, Briana Pierrette, and I'm excited for today's conversation because we're going to just be a little grown today. It's for the adults today, okay? So please be 18 plus if you're watching this episode, okay? Thank you. If you missed out on last week's episode, it was all about vulnerability. What we should be bringing to the table is vulnerability. So if you missed that episode, please do me a favor. Pause this one, head to the last one, okay, and watch that first because it segues into today's conversation, which we are talking about intimacy, right? Whew. Now, I know YouTube has a thing with the SE word, okay? And so I'm going to do my best to not say it, but today we are talking about loving, okay? And y'all understand what loving means, okay? This is grown folk business. Boobop, if you are new here, thank you so much for being here. Welcome to the vibe. Stay, become a part of the tribe, okay? And if you're already subscribed, you know I love you. How are you? How's your week? I hope you're living your absolute best life, and I'm so glad you're here with me today. Let's jump into this because y'all know I don't want to waste your time, okay? So one thing about this entire podcast and what it's really about, like if we're gonna put this into one word, I was thinking about this the other day. I was like, what is the podcast really about? And it really is about authenticity. It's just like showing up your truest, most authentic self. And we get so caught up in all of this stuff, okay? We get so caught up in how we're supposed to show up, what we're supposed to be doing with our life, who we're supposed to be, instead of just like getting to know ourselves. And that's conditioned ways of being, whether it was through family, through society, whatever the case may be. So one thing that I really am in this era of my own personal life and the era that I'm in with clients, with people in general, the people that I talk up, it's just, man, I have this dream where we just all live our authentic, most truest self, our most truest authentic life. And that's really what the power of this podcast is all about. Even the question, what do you bring to the table? Like, I want us to start bringing ourselves to the table, like, period. Like, who we actually are to the table. Open, 100% us. And you cannot be authentic without vulnerability. It's not possible. I don't know why we think that we can be authentic and not be vulnerable. It's like it's not a real thing. And a lot of people will say, well, I'm real without being vulnerable. But the truth is, vulnerability is literally the formula to authenticity. And I keep thinking about vulnerability and authenticity again and again, studying it, really getting into it, understanding how it showed up in my own personal life, how people deal with vulnerability. Vulnerability is something that people are just so terrified of. They just don't want to be vulnerable because you're susceptible to attack. Again, in the last episode, we talk a lot about it. But the one thing that I think about so much is the act of making love to someone else, okay, is probably the most vulnerable thing that we can do. It is spiritual, it is physically vulnerable, it is emotional. We have made it this very surface thing, this thing that you can just do with anybody, um, because technically you can, but it is extremely vulnerable. It is literally sharing yourself, flaws and all, with another person. It is literally allowing someone else to get to know you in ways that not everybody else does. It is this very intimate, very vulnerable act. And it is something that we all naturally want, naturally crave, most of us naturally like. And yet we run away from vulnerability. And I was thinking about this from the perspective of men and how men don't get to be emotional in society. I know today things are changing and we're starting to really be open and watching men be more vulnerable. And it's a beautiful thing, at least to me it is. But I think about why men are the way that they are when it comes to lovemaking or, intercourse, things of that sort. And when I look at all of it, on a surface level, I think to myself, like, wow, like that's all they care about. And then I think to myself, well, society has taught them to only care about that. Then I think, let's go deeper. right? In a world where men are supposed to play the role of people who are not supposed to be emotional, they're not allowed to feel their feelings deeply, they're not allowed to cry, they're not allowed to, have these safe spaces to really feel, because they have to be the protector. They have to be the one that is getting everything in order. Like, they don't get to be fully vulnerable, fully, emotional without being looked down upon one way or another, right? Whether directly or indirectly. Their only true way of being vulnerable is through intercourse, because it is one of the most vulnerable things we can do. And since it is such a, you know, it's this thing that's looked down upon for men to outwardly be the emotional kings that they are, they have to find a different route to express their emotions. And I think about how we as a society view intercourse and how we connect with one another. And it's this natural thing. It is, we are attracted to one another, and then we allow ourselves to connect to each other in that way, but we won't allow ourselves to emotionally connect to one another. Even though we know what comes with, like, the implications that come with intercourse, we'll still be in a position of not allowing ourselves to be emotionally attached. And I was one of those people. Like, I would have relations and keep emotions out of it, because in my head, it was actually more hurtful for someone to emotionally hurt me than sexually, or than to, have a body. Like, for me, it was just a good time. And the thing with me is that I was so hurt, so guarded, that although I was putting up this front of, like, I'm just so tough and I don't need anyone and I don't need anything, I actually looked to relations, sexual relations, for that level of intimacy and vulnerability. Like, that's literally what I turned to. And a lot of people that we see that end up in positions where they are, you know, turning to intercourse, they're having sex with multiple people, whatever the case may be. I really do feel like it is a vulnerability thing. It's like they don't have anywhere to feel safe enough to be vulnerable. And whenever we're in a position of not allowing ourselves to be vulnerable and to be open, we go looking for vulnerability, we go looking for intimacy, we go looking for safety somewhere, wherever that place may be. And I think about intercourse and I think about the way that we connect. I remember there was a long time, for a while, I was just so certain that I couldn't be loved, I couldn't be seen, that who I was, like the core of me, was rotten and was going to be rotten forever. So I remember the switch that I kind of went through. And I was so young. I was what, like 19, 18 years old. And I went through this switch. I could have even been 17 when, like, it officially started in the brain and then actively happened. But I did go through this moment where I was just like, you know what? If I'm damaged, if I'm never going to be loved, then F it. And so what I did was I emotionally shut it all down, right? The parts of me that wanted love, the parts of me that wanted, connection. I shut it down emotionally, and I just became this person that doesn't care. And so what ended up happening is I just started looking at relationships as something I don't need. And I started looking at connection with men as just like fun, right? So nothing was serious to me. And I didn't care who I hurt in the process. And I didn't care about getting hurt in the process. I shut my emotions down because, to me, that was weakness. And my vulnerability was actually hurting me more than helping me. And because I shut my vulnerability down, I started opening up my body. And what I started realizing is what was supposed to be, simple, where it's like I'm just messing with one person, ended up being me messing with multiple people at such a young age, only because I craved a level of intimacy, vulnerability, and love. Like it was an actual craving. And I didn't realize it at the time. At the time, I was screaming like, YOLO, like I'm living my best life, right? Like I'm doing me. Like I don't even need to take this stuff seriously, right? I was screaming the fact that I was so young and I'm just doing whatever and, I'm just having my fun. But the absolute truth was I craved vulnerability. I craved intimacy. I craved genuine love. And intercourse can feel that way. It can feel that moment of intimacy. It feels close. It feels like, wow, somebody actually wants to touch me. Somebody actually wants to be around me. Somebody actually wants to care about me. And although that is also fantasy, that was something that I would turn to in order for me to feel like I could have a moment of vulnerability. And I remember there was actually points in times where I would, be in the act and I would be crying. And like I told myself, convinced myself, I would even convince my partner, oh, like, no, it just feels so good. Right. Like, I don't know if you've ever like did the deed and it felt so good that you started crying. Right. Like for me, I was like, I was convincing myself it just feels good. It feels good. And that's why I'm crying. But in reality, I'm just like, wow, like, I just want connection. Like, I just want my person. Like, I'm not this person. I don't care to be having relations with random people. Like, I want my person. But I didn't actually realize that. And it took some real deep digging and real vulnerability for me to finally understand what intercourse even meant to me in the first place, and for me to understand why I was moving the way that I was moving. And I think a lot of times we look at, what we're doing. We look at how we move, how we are in connections, and what we look for in connections. And we just think like this is just the way, right? When people are saying, like, I look for somebody that has this much money, I look for somebody that has, a dope body, I look for somebody who X, Y, and Z's, all these like very surface level things. It's masking something deeper, right? And we don't even realize that it's masking something deeper. And for me, there was a point in time where I was just like, I'm just not looking for anything. Like, I just want to have fun. Like, I just want to have fun. And for me, what I brought to the table, because I felt so worthless in my life, what I brought to the table was my ability to literally do the deed. Like, I was just like, I know what I'm doing. Like, I know how to move. I was a dancer. I was like, let's go, right? I knew how to move my body. And so that was something that I felt confident in and I felt good in. And so, therefore, that's what I would look for. I would look for people who are just into trying new things and doing new things. And it wasn't my absolute truth. And the reality is that when it comes to connection, us not being vulnerable is the thing that's making us ask for, pray for, and look for people that don't actually align with our deep truth, right? Like the surface level stuff is cute and all. You can look for someone who has a banging body, and you can look for somebody who has, certain attributes that maybe your family would be proud of and happy to invite into your family. But what it comes down to is the core of who you are and the core of what you're looking for. And you don't actually know what you're calling in. You don't actually know the relationship you want. You don't know what kind of relationships you want until you get vulnerable with yourself. And I'm telling you, like, I was a tough girl for a while, very tough. And it wasn't an act, I had to be tough. But I was a tough girl for a while, but I was extremely sensitive. And I love deeply, and I'm extremely loyal when I love people. And that was something that, although I was proud to be loyal and I was proud of this like loving heart that I had towards people, I also was so hurt by that. And so, because I got hurt so often, I became this person that started looking for certain kind of people. And really, it wasn't me looking for those people because they were my type. I was looking for those people because I was like, what's not going to hurt me? Like, I would get into relationships or I would deal with people that I know can't hurt me, that I know if it were to end, I'd be fine with it. Like, I'd be okay. Like, yeah, maybe it sucks a little bit, but for the most part, I'd be okay. Right. And it took a really real moment with myself to just be like, you don't want this. Like, you don't want this. This is hurting you. This is not making you feel any better. You think you're in control, but you're not in control. And I had to realize where it was coming from in the first place. Right. My, need to have intercourse or to have relations with multiple people had everything to do with my sexual trauma. It also had a lot to do with the fact that I felt so unloved by my father, and then by the rest of my family, and then by the things that I was going through, the type of trauma that I had to deal with on a regular basis. It all played a part, but I took that, and instead of getting vulnerable about my trauma and about the things that I was going through, I took that and I made it my personality. I made it me, right? It's how I operate. Like, I'm just so free, willy-nilly. I just do me how I want to do me. And it's true. I am very free. I am very, let's try different things. I want to do, you know, adult things in very not so normal places. Like, I am that kind of person, but I'm that kind of person with my person. That's how I want to be. I want to be the kind of person that does all that stuff with my person. But I started to do it with whoever would take me, because the truth is, I was hurting, and like deeply, deeply, deeply hurting. And without me being vulnerable, I was able to mistake that for authenticity. I'm just being real. Like, I just don't care for relationships right now. And in all technicality, I am being real. I don't care for relationships right now because I'm hurt, right? But that extra step of going a little deeper, of understanding why I am the way I am, why I was doing what I was doing, why I was choosing what I was choosing, had nothing to do with gender roles. It had nothing to do with I'm a woman, so I need to act like a lady. It had nothing to do with any of that stuff. It's just, oh shit, I'm hurt. Like, this is a trauma response. Like, I am doing this out of pain. And so therefore, there's nothing authentic about any of the connections that I'm making. There's nothing authentic about any of the things that I am currently doing. Even if it feels good for the moment, in the long run, it doesn't feel good, because as much as I'm running away from abandonment, I'm running right into it, because I'm dealing with people who I end up connecting with and then they abandon me, or I have to abandon them in order for me to not be abandoned. So it's just this whole cycle. And I think what we have to realize when we're talking about the table and when we're talking about, what we want from connections, we have to realize where we're coming from. What part of us are we coming from? Do we actually know what we're asking for? Or are we asking for things that we feel we need in order for us to feel a level of connection, a level of control, a level of ease within our lives, because we don't want to go any deeper? And I think that's one of the biggest issues with connections these days. It is extremely surface level. It is all about, well, what do you bring to the table? Like, what can I physically see that you bring to the table that would benefit me in some way? And we're not even thinking about the us to the core. We're not thinking about ourselves to the core. We're just thinking about would benefit this like persona, this version of me that I've become due to my experiences, right? And so when we allow ourselves to truly be vulnerable, we allow ourselves to ask ourselves the question of, what do I actually need? How can I get intimate without intercourse? How can I truly understand myself to the core in order for me to call in what aligns with me? That right there is really what allows us to have deeper connections, stronger connections, more beautiful connections. It is us not just being authentic, because you can say, I'm being authentic because you're being real. And being real just simply means like you're speaking your truth. If you literally are in a position where you're just like, yeah, I'm just having fun, that's not inauthentic. That's real. But this is why vulnerability is the formula. Vulnerability helps us understand why we're doing the things that we're doing. It helps us understand the depth of what we're asking for. If you're asking for a certain kind of person to show up in your life because this is who you want to connect with, vulnerability allows you to understand exactly why you're asking for that person, not just who you're asking for, but why are you asking for this? Why does this fulfill you? Why do you feel like this is what you need in your life? And that we're not doing that enough. And when we are doing that, we're doing it from such a surface level. It is this energy of, I'm asking for this because, I bring this, that, and a third to the table. And so therefore I need somebody that can match my fly, that can match my X, Y, and Z. And it's just like, Okay, that's still very surface level. Because the truth is, I do feel like relationships fall apart because eventually that surface stuff starts to die out. We need more connection than we know. We need more depth than we know because lives and life gets hard and life gets crazy and life goes everywhere. And you want a level of safety. You want a level of someone who is going to be open to getting to know you, to growing with you, to seeing you for who you are while you're also seeing you for who you are. Because who you are today is going to be different 5 years from now, period. Whether that looks better, worse, it doesn't matter. You're going to be different. Every moment of your life changes you, period. Whether it changes you a little bit or a lot, you change on a regular basis. So when we keep it so surface, this is why we get so rocky in our relationships. This is why things can feel so beautiful and sparkly and yay at first, but then it starts to die out. And we do this thing where we commit to one another without truly allowing ourselves to see one another and understand what we're getting into. So now we get into this situation where we're working on relationships and we say things like love is hard work, marriage is hard work. You have to work hard in order for you to X, Y, and Z. And I get that analogy. I understand why we say it. It's just, I don't think it has to be hard work. I think it just takes real connection, right? Like, we wouldn't see it so hard if it was the norm to be super vulnerable with one another, to be super open with one another. It wouldn't feel so overwhelming to hear each other's truth if it was the norm, if it was how we led in our relationships. But we kind of lead with this surface level thing, then we interact in a way that's like, okay, well, let's get deep by having intercourse. Let's get deep by, getting to know each other a little bit, getting a little deep here and there, we get these feelings of, I feel like I've known you before. You feel like home to me. So now we're moving off of that. And we're just like, okay, this is a beautiful relationship. But if we start the relationships off with vulnerability, with authenticity, here's where I'm at. Here is where I'm at, and here are my ambitions. Here are my goals. Here's what I want. Here's where I want to be. Right? When it gets that real, when it can start off that real, and it's not this like all talk situation or just trying to talk yourself up or put your best foot forward. Like, it's just like put one foot forward and see what naturally happens instead of us all acting. And that's what I feel happens. We just be acting. We're just like, oh, I want to date you. So therefore, I'm going to show up a certain way that's going to make you want me more. Instead of, I'm interested in you. However, I would love to get to know you while you get to know me to see if it's a good match, right? To see if we can connect, if there's something here. And I think we say that, but we don't operate that way. And I'm not saying this is for everybody because there are people who literally like it's such an organic meeting, it's such an organic situation. And most of those people you tend to see are friends. They started off as friends and then they ended up in a relationship because they got to see each other. Those, in my opinion, are some really strong relationships because they got to see each other beyond, the fantasy of love and intercourse and things of that sort. They allowed themselves to know each other, good, bad, ugly, and then said, you know what, you are my person. But we do this thing where we have this societal norm where men are not allowed to be vulnerable because that's weird. And then women are too emotional, and that's annoying. So now there's a clash. We don't understand how to meet each other. We want to trust each other, but we won't trust each other. There's a lot of talk, but there's not enough actual action. We are all genuinely afraid of vulnerability. We're genuinely afraid to go deep, but then we're laying in bed with each other doing the most vulnerable thing possible. And it's just it's messed up. You feel me? Like, it's just messed up. And today's, episode, I was like, I'm gonna just talk. Like, I'm gonna just talk. I'm just gonna let it all out. So it may sound all over the place because it is all over the place. The way that we date, the way that we connect, the way that we see each other. And right now I am speaking to dating. That's why we're talking about the adult things. But it's like the way we connect to each other, we take what's supposed to be deep and beautiful and we make it surface and then we wonder why it doesn't work. And then when we ask ourselves, why do I keep running into the same situations, or why do I keep doing the same types of things? It's literally, the answer is vulnerability. You're just not vulnerable. You keep dealing with the same kind of people that keep doing the same things to you because you're not vulnerable. You keep operating the same way because you're not vulnerable. Whatever the situation may be, whether you are afraid of abandonment, whether you are afraid of intimacy, whether you are just naturally distant, right, in your head, it doesn't matter what the situation is. Vulnerability is what you're missing. That's it. You can be authentic, but you're not actually authentic until you're vulnerable. That is the formula. And it's just something that I want us to start wrapping our minds around by just thinking about it. Today, I'm not trying to teach nothing. I'm not trying to uh, force anything down anybody's throat. It's just conversation. There is just this need for us to understand that we've created a culture where we've taken vulnerability out. And that's what's made things so hard for us to connect, right? But then we do feel so amazing about certain connections when vulnerability does exist, because it's like, whoa, I haven't experienced this, or I'm not used to this. And what happens is we get so caught up in the situations or the people connections that come in that are semi-vulnerable, that we're not even looking at the truth. We're not even interested in going to the next part of it, which is, do I vibe here? We're just so we're just so wowed by the fact that they're so vulnerable. Wow, they're so honest, they're so truthful, they're so authentic, they told me the truth. And it's a beautiful thing, but sometimes vulnerability and authenticity is helping you understand, is this person for me or is this person not for me? Is this a good connection or is this not a good connection? Is this person here to mirror back to me what it is that I need to understand what to walk away from? Or are they mirroring back to me something I need to learn within myself and connect more deeper to, right? And we don't look at it that way. We look at it as, I haven't experienced this before, and so therefore this must be it. And we will force it to fit, force it to work, right? We receive a little something that we're not used to receiving and we go crazy over it. We're just like, yes, I need more of this. Yes, this felt so good. I want more of this, right? The intercourse was just so amazing this time because there was probably a deeper, more intimate connection that you're not even aware of. But we're going to make it a competition thing, or we're going to make it about performance. Ooh, the things that they were doing, it just hit. Felt so good. And also, what you're not understanding is that there was an energetic vulnerability that was taking place during that intercourse. And that's what had that feeling so good. You feel me? Vulnerability is a thing that is literally missing. And once we get to a place of actually deciding that we're done, like throwing ourselves in this position of feeling like we want to connect, but we don't want to be fully vulnerable, we'll actually start being vulnerable with ourselves. And because we're vulnerable with ourselves, we can be vulnerable with each other. And since we're vulnerable with each other, we can actually understand who we align with and who we don't. And we won't be so afraid to, one, be rejected, two, reject others, and then three, actually connect with our people. It won't be so scary. It won't be so crazy. But I'm telling you, I've been the girl who has literally fought and bopped, right? I've also been the girl who has been in a very committed, loyal relationship. And I will pick the committed, loyal relationship every day for the rest of my life. But as a young girl who literally didn't have any safe space to speak on what was taking place in my home and what I had to go through on a regular basis and the type of trauma that I've experienced, I literally had to find whatever felt okay, whatever felt like I could just like escape. And in doing that, it's like it felt authentic to me. It felt real to me. Like I felt like I was that person. Like, yeah, this is just who I am. I'm sexually free. I'm just, I'm just somebody, I'm open. I'm this, I'm that. I'm an Aquarius. Like, I'm chilling, right? Like, that was that. I made so many very clear points as to why I was doing what I was doing. But the moment I was allowing myself to be vulnerable, it's like I could have a moment and I could be like, whoa, I could see how hurt I was after interactions. I could see how much I didn't actually like what I was doing. I could even see how much I genuinely wanted a relationship. And the only reason why, I could even see that even the people I was messing with, even though I didn't like them, if they actually wanted a relationship, I would have just gotten into one. Because I'm like, oh shit, I love people. Like, I want to nurture and I want to show up and I want to, be there for people. But I also want people to be there for me. And my defense mechanism was to not care. But I care so much. And if I was just vulnerable with myself from the beginning and understood that I was hurt, I'd actually spend more time working on me than trying to find a level of intimacy and love through everybody else. And I'm telling you, once I was able to do that, once I was able to be that vulnerable, I stopped. I stopped dealing with all the people. I stopped, you know, having my fun. And I started getting so clear on me, what I cared for, what I wanted, just because I got a little vulnerable. Just because I finally said, oh, this hurts me. I don't like it as much as I think I do. And even then, when I admitted that to myself, it wasn't easy to stop because at this point it became a habit to kind of just, somebody wants to hang out, sure, let's hang out. Yeah, right? Because I wanted to feel wanted. And I got even deeper about that. But it opened the door for me to realize how I actually felt when I was with people, how I felt so alone at parties, how I felt so just down in certain spaces, how I was going through so much and hiding so much of what I was going through, and how much I didn't feel like anyone could ever understand me because things I was going through was spiritual and physical, and I didn't know how to explain it, right? There was a lot that was happening in my life that as soon as I got vulnerable with myself, I could actually get vulnerable about everything and everyone else in my life. And it helped me to literally change the trajectory of how I was going about things. I aligned myself with the job that I wanted. I then got into a relationship that I felt like I wanted at the time. I literally did the things that I wanted to do, and it felt so much more aligned with who I was. And even then, because I was so wounded and didn't actually do the healing work, I only got vulnerable. I still ended up in situations that weren't for me. The relationship I ended up with, as much as I felt like that was love and that was something, that was also pain. I also accepted things from that relationship that I shouldn't have, right? That I now know better. But it did change the way that I was going. And I think when we think about connection, when we think about what we're bringing to the table, what we're asking for, when we think about the type of people that we're calling into our lives, the connections we're trying to make, we really do need to think, what version of myself is asking for this? There's a version of ourselves that thinks we're so healed and so on it and so like good. And then there's a version of ourselves that is literally conditioned, right? It's literally a trauma response to ask for this type of connection. And then there's that version of you that is so honest, that is so real. And I'm telling you, when I got real with myself, as much as I wanted a relationship, I was able to be vulnerable enough with myself to say, like, but I don't deserve one right now. And I could, like, get that real with me. Like, I literally understood I don't deserve one right now because I was still sliding out of, having my fun. So, as much as I wanted to be the girl that was in a relationship, I'm like 19 years old at the time. I'm like, as much as I want a relationship, I got vulnerable with me and I was like, I wouldn't want to date me right now. So I had to turn my life around. I had to change what I was doing, who I was talking to. I had to change what I was thinking. So now turning 20, I was like, okay, now I want to focus on me. I want to get myself together. I want to just really see what kind of person I am. And I did. And then when I got to a place around like 21, I believe, when I turned 21, that's when I really slowed down. That's when I really was like, okay, now I'm ready for a relationship because I am loyal, because I do want just one person, because I have worked on myself, because I am in a position where I'm down for that. And I really did end up in a relationship just like a few months after declaring it. And after ending up in that relationship, everything that I thought I was, which was loyal and really somebody like I love like my man, like when I'm with a man, like I love that man, right? So that's who I was as much as I could be, as much as I could be, as much as I could be. However, in the relationship, I couldn't be that all the way. because I was still dealing with the trauma. I was still dealing with the healing portion. So I ended up attracting somebody who definitely reflected back to me everything that I need to heal, right? That's connection. That's what connection is. Getting vulnerable with yourself allows you to understand exactly what's happening in your life right now that you don't want. It allows you to open up to what's going on and then decide to change it. And then when you decide to change it, God, the universe, is going to go ahead and hand you this newer life, this newer perspective, this real connection. And it's going to be a real connection, but that connection is going to help you see something. Always. It's going to meet you where you're at. And you're either going to grow together or you're going to separate. And that's going to be the person that teaches you so much, or that's going to be the person that's going to help you see things from the perspective that you need to see it in order for you to become a better version of yourself. Right? And you're either going to come back together or you're never going to come back together. And that's okay too. But I think it's one of those things where we look at, I was saying this the other day. I'm like, I feel bad for men because it's just, I get why X is the thing that they go after because they're not allowed to cry. They're not allowed to feel. They're not allowed to openly show their emotions, at least not for too long, at least not in front of certain people. They're not allowed to truly be 100% themselves unless it looks as manly as possible, whatever that means, right? The moment they start to express themselves that looks anything remotely against society's norms, they're questioned and like heavily questioned. Whereas to, in my opinion, women, yes, we go through it in so many ways, but there's a little bit more flexibility. Yes, when we're emotional, we're too emotional, but we do get to feel our emotions, which means we do get to be vulnerable. If not with other men, if not in a professional setting, at least we get to be vulnerable with our friends. Men, even with their friends, don't really get to be vulnerable with their friends unless they connect to the right friends. And so I understand the whole need for sex because that is intimacy, that is vulnerability, that is where they get to feel their emotions, that is that sacral chakra energy. So it makes sense. However, I do think that it can be changed. I think we can all start to accept each other's vulnerability. We can all stop pointing at each other and saying, you're too emotional. Instead, we can look at each other and say, please be emotional with me. We're emotional beings, all of us, every single one of us. No one is more emotional than the other one. We all feel emotions, every single one of us. How we feel them is different. That's the truth. How we feel them is different, but we all feel the emotions. We all know what every feeling is. Even people who are just stoic, they know how to feel their emotions. It just looks different from people who are not stoic. So if we start being so open to vulnerability instead of afraid of it, we start allowing it to be the norm. We start realizing that just like making love is this very normal thing that we all can talk about, that we all can like, that we all can agree is pleasurable, we can actually see that being vulnerable can be pleasurable too. It actually feels amazing. It actually opens doors. It actually allows us to be who it is that we genuinely want to be and need to be for ourselves and with each other. The connection truly does thrive off of authenticity. However, it expands and it goes the distance off of vulnerability. And the more vulnerable we are with one another, honestly, the easier it is for us to connect, the easier it is for us to know who our people are, and the better our life truly, truly is. So, I know that was a little bit of a rant. I'm not even gonna lie. That went everywhere. It went here, 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 and here. But sometimes it gotta be like that. Sometimes it just has to be like that. Okay. And I just felt like this is just something we need to think about, right? We need to think about. I'm not 100% right. You may have an opinion. Let me know what your opinion is. That's okay. This is a discussion, conversation, whatever the case may be, right? It's definitely not a debate, though. I'm not trying to debate this, but it is an opinion, right? And I do feel like vulnerability can really heal and change so many things. And I would know this because I've been on both sides of the spectrum. I've been on the really, really, really hurt side. I've been on the really, really, really healed side. I've also have had relations and connections that were extremely bad and been able to be turned around and do a complete 180 and be the most safest, most beautiful relationship too. So I get it on so many levels. And I'm the kind of person that likes to see things from all perspectives. I don't just look at a situation only from my perspective. I'll see a situation between me and another person, and I always look at my perspective and I look at their perspective. I see what it is that's going on with them and what's going on with me. And the one thing that I know in every relationship I've ever had, I'm like, if I knew it was okay to be vulnerable and they knew it was okay to be vulnerable and we were just extremely vulnerable with each other, I wonder what would have happened if we were just all vulnerable. Would some of those relationships still end? Maybe. But how would the conversations have gone? How much would we have grown and healed? How much time would have been less spent on trying to heal from the situation because we're trying to make up stories or understand what went down if we were just 100% honest and vulnerable? Not just honest, because sometimes honesty can just be a whole bunch of truths, but honesty with feeling, honesty with depth, right? There's a difference between I don't like you and you honestly remind me of my mother who I have trauma with. And it's something that I'm still working through, and connecting just isn't working for me. Both of them hurt. Let's never take that away. Both of them hurt. But one has a little bit more, it allows for both parties to move through and heal through the situation, see things from such a real perspective. How somebody handles the information, that's a whole different situation. But literally, if we were all vulnerable, the conversations would just go so much easier, right? So that's something that I really want us to think through a lot more. When it comes to intimacy, when it comes to, you know, intercourse, things of that sort, we are natural in that. We naturally want it and we naturally are into it. And even then, there's still some fear. There's still some, oh my God, I don't know if they're going to like my body and da, 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 right? We still feel a little insecure, but we're more likely to do it. Why not make vulnerability and feeling our feelings openly with one another the norm too? Imagine how good that could actually feel once we get over the hump of how embarrassing or how scary that actually can be. It's not that scary once you start putting it to practice. But before you start practicing it with others, practice it with yourself. Why are you the way that you are? Why are you into the kind of people that you're into? Why do you call in what you're calling in? When you look at your type and you write it out, why? Not that anything is wrong with what you are interested in, but how deep does it go? When you think about your type, are you just talking about surface level things? Or are you actually going deep? Are you talking about a person from a soul level? Do you even care about the person's soul? When you think about connecting with somebody, is that what you're thinking about? Are you thinking about a person's soul, or are you just thinking about their table manners? Right? These are things that if you start having those conversations with yourself and getting deep and vulnerable with yourself, these are your thoughts with you. You can start to shape it a little bit and start to understand it a little deeper. Are you actually calling in somebody that you genuinely want? Or are you calling in somebody that resembles your parents? Are you actually calling in somebody because you are ready for a connection? Or are you calling in somebody because you're just alone and you don't want to be and you don't like your own company? Right? Having these types of real questions being asked to ourselves can change and shift the trajectory of how we're connecting and who we're connecting with. So I'm gonna end it right there. Like I said, this went everywhere, but I hope that this sparks some thoughts. I hope that this is something that we can talk more about. I'm probably gonna take this and refine it a little bit and like do an actual video on this, because I see what happens to us in connections and I see where we go, and I'm just like learning this in my own life. And a lot of my clients I'm seeing too, this is a thing for them. They just don't, they're just not vulnerable. Like, that's it. It just comes down to one thing. It's vulnerability. And once that becomes a norm, lots will change. Okay. But until next time, I'm sending you so much love. Thank you for watching.